welcome back to the Second and Two podcast. I'm your host, TB, with my co-host and my producer, Jody. What's up, Joe?
Yo, what's good, man? You ready to talk these projections on some receivers going into the draft, leading into pro day coming up here soon?
Yeah, facts, bro. I mean, we took a nice little 2-week break after the Super Bowl. Gave ourselves some much needed rest and time off, but we're back and we're back to get ourselves right into the draft. So, Jody and I over this little break that we took, we didn't stop thinking about the pod, but over the next 8 weeks before the draft, we've got some different position groups that we want to highlight going into the draft at the top end, guys that we like, so that as you're watching the draft, hopefully you kind of know a lot more about each of these guys. You got a little in-depth knowledge about each position group. So, Joe, who are we talking about this week?
Today we got the receivers. Different variables on each dude, Some are taller, some are smaller. Few and everything in between. We got it all,
Yeah, they come in all shapes and sizes, baby.
Exactly.
So I'll go ahead and share my screen so everyone can see kind of what we're talking about with this receiver group. Let's make sure everybody can see that, Joe. We're good?
Yeah, we're good.
How we looking? Still good?
Crisp, yep.
All right, cool. So, Joe and I are going to talk receivers today. We'll highlight 5 guys that we really like at the top of the draft. Talk to you about, what we think they can do for an offense, who they might look like that's already there at the next level, what or some of their strengths are, and then possibly which teams could be in the mix or where they could be drafted coming up in April. So, Joe, who we want to start with today?
And so we're starting off with our guy Quentin Johnston from TCU. He was in that championship game, obviously. That guy stacks up at 6'4", 215. Let's see, he's got 30 games down there. He's got a total of 115 catches, 21, almost 2,200 yards, 14 touchdowns, and average yards per catch was at 19.
Yeah, man. I think I really like Quentin Johnston from TCU. Got to see him up close and personal this year. I actually went to the TCU Oklahoma game back in October, and he didn't necessarily have a great game that day, but his size speed combination definitely stood out. Watching that one, from the stands, and one of the things that really stands out when you watch his film, first and foremost, is his explosive playmaking. If you look at his stats, he only played 30 games over the course of 3 seasons, which is an average of 10 games a year. But his production, in terms of catches, for only having 115 catches to have almost 2,200 yards, that's pretty impressive. That means he's averaging almost 20 yards a catch. I mean, literally 19 yards a catch is kind of insane. You got to think every time he's catching the ball, he's getting you nearly 20 yards. So the biggest thing that stands out for me with him is his explosive playmaking. He had 20 catches this past year for 20 plus yards. He also drew 5 more 15-yard pass interference penalties, which are, big in themselves. And so when we talk about explosives, generally we define an explosive as a pass for more than 20 yards and a run for 12 plus. So that's how, when we're looking at breaking down our defense at my level, that's how we define explosives. So this Quentin Johnston was just an explosive waiting to happen. You can kind of see, I got a clip for you here of a play against, I believe this was Kansas.
See, are you on full screen mode or what do you got going
Yeah,
on?
yeah, I'm on full screen.
Okay, you might have to turn that off.
Turn the full screen off.
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
Is that better?
Yeah.
So hopefully this will let me play the video still where you can see it.
Who are they matching up against? Is that Nebraska?
That's Kansas.
Kansas.
So it's not showing up when I go full screen mode. That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
So if I do this, it's gone.
Yeah, it's just frozen on the the play.
That's such a bummer. All right,
I mean,
so
the
we'll
size of the thing doesn't change, so I mean, it is fine.
yeah. So you can see it from here. This is Quentin Johnson in the slot, and he is playing against Kansas. So he runs just a little slot fade, and I mean, Max Duggan just puts it up for him. He knows he's got one-on-one, right? And you'll see it in a second here from the behind angle. They even threw a penalty on this. He caught it anyway, but just the over the shoulder, he doesn't even quite see it and still comes down with that catch. Really, really impressive play. And like that's the kind of stuff that this guy was known to do at TCU, like constantly, especially this year. He really popped this year with plays like that. That's why he had 20 catches for 20 plus yards, right? And so, you know, the next two things that I highlight as strengths here are kind of why or how he's able to make some of these explosive plays. I mean, the next thing is his ability to create separation. So like his releases, then you combine that with elite level speed and then the big frame. He's either able to run past DBs and then stack them, or he gets to the top of a route and he can use his body to cut away. Like, you know, I'll show you a clip here and we'll get out of the full screen again so we can see it. This is a clip of him against TCU. Or I'm sorry, they are TCU. I'm sorry. Oklahoma State. So you'll see at the top of the route, he just creates that separation with his body. This isn't even the elite speed. He gets off and then boom, just that big frame. And then he's able to turn around and run away from the guy, make a cut, break a tackle, get down the field, right? He's got a little wiggle to him. But when we'll watch it again here in a sec, just his ability to beat you off the line of scrimmage, get inside, right? And then at the top of the route, I can just stop on a dime, use my big frame, push off a little DB, catch the ball, turn around, break the tackle, and get more yards. You see how just that arm, and he's so big that little movement of his arm and wiggle, it just makes all the difference when you're playing against a guy who's, you know, a 6 foot DB when Quentin Johnson's 6'4", right?
Yeah.
So his frame with that speed, and then he really does have pretty decent releases off the line of scrimmage right now. You put all that together, and if he wants to run a go route, he can get inside you or get outside you, use his speed to run by you, and then stack you. Where now as a DB, I'm just behind. I'm caught, right? And or if I know I want to run some kind of in cut, I can get inside, put my shoulder on you, and then come back, and just like he did at the top of that route with the curl route, just come away from you, use my body to create that separation. So he can either use his big frame or his speed to create separation, and that helps him create a lot of big plays. And then the last one, you know, this is a phrase that we coined here, yakability, bro. His ability to just create yards after the catch, right? Yeah. And I think when you think about some of the better receivers in the league, you know, we love like the go ball, right? Their ability to just beat a defender down the field, run down there and catch it behind everybody and score. But some of the more impressive plays and the more valuable plays from an offensive standpoint are those get the ball to a guy right now and let him just go make it happen, because those are high percentage plays, right? The vertical ball down the field, you have to have the timing, you have to have the offensive line giving your quarterback protection, and you have to have your quarterback, right, be able to make that throw, and you have to have some kind of advantageous look from the defense, or at least just elite playmaking from both your quarterback and receiver to beat a good look from the defense, right? Versus if I can make a screen throw or a hitch right now, I can just get the ball out. Okay, now it takes away the factor of my offensive line blocking, and really all that matters is, can my quarterback throw the ball and get it to my guy where he can catch it and get up the field and make a move, right? And then from there, it's just pure athleticism from that receiver. So that yak ability from a receiver, I think, is an underrated quality. And some of the better guys in the league, you think about guys like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and Cooper Kupp. Those guys are also good at creating yards after they catch the ball, especially in quick game. And so this was one of the things that I think really separated Quentin Johnston this year. You know, he was incredible at making the contested catches down the field, But really what made him elite was his ability to take those shorter throws and make them longer plays, right? So last clip here that we can show of Johnston, this was against Michigan in that crazy college football playoff game, right? This is a 3rd and 7 while Michigan is coming back in the fourth quarter, right? Or right at the end of the third quarter, I believe. It's a really, really big play. Michigan brings pressure, and you'll see what happens with Quentin Johnston. He's in the slot at the top there, as you see him highlighted. He runs the little under route, and they get him the ball actually behind the line of scrimmage, and all he does one little hezzy step, and then he's just a long strider, and he's gone. No one else is going to catch him because those long strides, right? Flies into the end zone. You can see it again from the behind here. He's running all the way across the field. One little right? You missed the tackle, and now he's just gone. There's no one else who's going to catch him. He covers almost 5 yards with every stride. It's unbelievable how quick and fast he is with those strides, and they're long, right? So when I look at him, and keep in mind, I know everyone loses their mind on comparisons, right? Oh, who is this guy? Oh, I am comparing him to, Jerry Rice. It's like, all right, of course, we're not going to tell you that any of these guys are going to be bums, right? Nor are we going to tell you that any of these guys are going to be like, can I promise any of these guys are going to be elite level players? But just in terms of their body type, how they play, the things they do well at the college level, these are what I just see when I watch these guys. Like if they were to just reach their ultimate potential and they play like a certain guy that you've watched on Sundays, this is the guy that comes to mind. So for me, it's Julio Jones when I look at Quentin Johnston, right? He's that big frame with that elite speed, the long strider, can make the explosive play with the big catch down the field or take the short throw and make it a big time play. Is he going to be Julio Jones? I don't know. I'm not sure that I'm ready to say that, but that's who he reminds me of when I watch him, right? So here's a play from Julio Jones with the Falcons a few years ago against the Eagles. This is a 4th and 3 against the Eagles. And I think you'll see some similarities from that Quentin Johnston play we just watched against Michigan. I'll let the film speak for itself on this one. Boop.
A little screen and gone.
He's gone.
Yeah.
They even do the same like track finish at the end through the end zone, right? It's like those guys, they look very similar body types. Take you through it again. He just runs the little now screen coming back. And again, he just breaks one little tackle, and he's that long strider, and he's gone. It's a touchdown. So I think that the body, the frame, the long stride, they look very similar to me. They play a similar style of game. Now, is Quentin Johnston going to be Julio Jones in the NFL? I'm not ready to say that, but you can see this is why this guy is projected so high right now, because that's ultimately like his ceiling could be a guy like Julio Jones. So, Joe, I mean, does that make sense? What are you seeing?
Yeah, for me, I thought he very literally looked like Larry Fitz or Devontae Adams. Obviously they both have the dreads, or I guess all three of them. But if I'm being honest, when you were talking about him, I just sounded like I was a hater from what I wrote down. I was saying, and looking at the numbers too, it kind of is really bad. But I didn't think he really had all too much breakaway speed when I was watching his highlights.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to me he looked more like a tight end as opposed to a receiver. Probably because the big frame, and I didn't think he looked all too fast compared to anyone else. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I could break down those numbers on the side right there from each year. I got 2020, he had 22 receptions, 47 yards, 2 TDs. 2021, he had 33 catches, 612 yards, 6 touchdowns. And then last year, he had 60 catches, 1,069 yards, 6 touchdowns. And over those 3 years, he had 3 longs of over 75. The other one was 75, 2 were 76.
Mm-hmm. He really did pop this year. I mean, he's been a guy that's had the traits since he got to TCU, but he finally popped this year the way they thought he could.
Yeah, and then it's funny you brought up that Kansas game in that first clip, because that was the game I wrote down that stood out to me. They were ranked 17 TCU and Kansas was 19. They won 38-31. He had 14 catches, 206 yards, a touchdown, a long of 63, and he was averaging 14.7 in that game.
Dude, what a beast. That's a wide receiver one kind of stat line right there. No question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you watch all the film, and what I appreciate about what you said, Joe, is that you weren't just watching highlights, right? Like you're watching real game film, and I think sometimes we can get lost in the sauce of the highlights. Oh, look at all the things this guy does great.
Yeah.
But I think I appreciate that you're watching real film and not getting lost in that sauce and saying, hey, there are some things about this guy that maybe I don't like. And that's, when you're at this level and you're looking at the difference between this guy and any of the other 4 or 5 guys we're going to mention today, the difference is nitpicking. I mean, it is. But the crazy part is, when you look at it, those little nitpicky differences are what feel like nitpicking right now. One guy's Achilles heel could be the reason he's not a great player in the NFL. So you have to take all of it seriously, and you don't want to put any guys down, but you also want to look at like, all right, what does this guy do well, and what are the things that he can bring to an offense versus where is he going to struggle? And I think so much of what matters with the draft is how a guy fits, in your scheme. And I think this is more important in some positions than others. I think maybe less so at receiver, but at least in the modern way that the NFL is run and the way the NFL offenses are run, I think every offense can use, 3 legitimate receivers. Maybe 20 years ago, that wasn't the case,
Yeah.
And maybe even just 10 years ago, that wasn't as much the case. So I do think it matters a little bit less for receiver. We've seen in the last, 3 seasons, 3 drafts, that there have been some big time receivers that have come out and made, been productive right away. I mean, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson were part of that draft 2 years ago, and those guys are 2 of the best receivers in the league. I don't think that this draft has that, but I do think this draft has real ball players. I think guys who can come in and contribute right away for a good offense. So while I disagree with what you said about the breakaway speed, and I know you kind of qualified it like maybe I was wrong. I think you were already kind of maybe leaning that way. I disagree with you on that part. I do appreciate that you're watching. You're like, hey, maybe there are some plays where he doesn't break away, and so I'm not saying that doesn't exist or that I didn't see that stuff too. But you want to highlight a guy like what does he do really well, and so when we're talking about that, like what can he do for an offense? I think he's going to excel in an offense that gives him a role where he can run a lot of vertical balls, and then he can catch some screens early on to take advantage of some of his natural traits. I still think he needs work as a route runner, and maybe that's where kind of some of the stuff you were talking about, what you were seeing. Sometimes his route running, isn't at a level like a Julio Jones. Like that's the difference between a Julio Jones and someone who just is big and fast, right? Is that that guy, his craft, his route running technique, all of those things, or Devontae Adams, for instance, right? Like those things, they're on point. And I think that's probably where Quentin Johnston can use some work and development. But if early on a team can just take advantage of his raw, natural traits and say, hey, you're going to run vertical balls, we're going to throw you screens, we're going to still develop your route running, and as you go, you're going to become a better and better player.
Even down the road.
Yeah, I think that's when he could become an elite number 1 receiver in the league. Like he has the physical traits to be that. He has the traits to be Julio Jones. He looks like him. Now is he going to put in the work that, with the route running and knowledge of coverage and all those other things that separate the good ones from the great ones? That's the part that you can't answer unless you're in the room with the guy and you see him. But just based on the film, he's there. So if you look at across mock drafts right now, right now he's a surefire first round pick. A lot of people are saying he's between that 5 and 15 range. Some teams that might need receivers that are kind of in that range, or at least in the range to trade up. You'd have the Titans, the Texans, the Patriots, and the Packers. Joe, any of those teams stand out to you as a team that you would like to see Quentin Johnston on?
I would say definitely the Packers if our guy Rodgers is still there. He could definitely use a guy like this. I would say another one, even the Titans. I don't know. the Patriots, this sounds bad. I don't want to do this to this guy, but they normally don't hit on their receivers, you know?
Yeah.
And so if he goes there, that's already looking bad in my eyes. But yeah, I think the Titans and Packers would be ideal for the guy. Texans, they're on the up and up slowly. They got their head coach, defensive mind, so we'll see what happens there. But if that's a need, you got to go out and do it.
Yeah. I think you look at just kind of all four teams, like the Titans, they just cut Robert Woods. AJ Brown's gone, Julio Jones is gone, right? Like they definitely have a need at receiver. They're in that range where they could definitely take their pick of the litter here, more than likely. So I could certainly see the Titans taking him. The Texans, they have 2 picks. I believe they're the 12th pick in their second time around. So they, if they take a guy like Bryce Young with their first pick, I could definitely see them saying, hey, let's go get him a number 1 receiver, assuming that Brandon Cooks is not a guy that they're going to keep around. They really don't have a whole lot of receiver depth right now. So that would make sense. You want to get if you're going to take a quarterback that high, you want to invest in the things around him to give him the tools to be successful. You mentioned the Patriots. They did take Tyquan Underwood from Baylor last year, and he looked like he could be something before he got hurt. So he kind of had a spotty season, so maybe there's something there for them. Maybe they don't want to take a receiver. I don't know. Probably depends on their new offensive coordinator and what he's looking to do. And then finally, the Packers, they took Christian Watson last year. He came on as the season went. He looked pretty good. They still have Alan Lazard. They took, still have Randall Cobb, So, and they took another receiver. I'm blanking on his name right now that they liked in the later rounds who people thought could be pretty good. So they may not have receiver as a need if they feel like the guys in building are going to continue developing at this point. But if they wanted a big play guy, like it wouldn't hurt to have Christian Watson and Quentin Johnston, so could be some interesting stuff there with, one of those 4 teams possibly taking him. Joe, who do we have next?
Yeah, so we're looking at Jordan Addison out of USC. He's a little bit smaller guy compared to Quentin. He's 6 foot, 175. Let's see. He played at Pitt, transferred to USC. My guy had 35 games in college, 219 catches, 3,134 total yards, 29 touchdowns with an average of 14.3. And just a quick reminder, bro, go ahead and exit out the full screen so you can scroll down.
Yeah, you can see it now. So with Jordan Addison, I think the thing that stands out for him is that this guy was a touchdown machine. 29 touchdowns in 35 games. Like he's getting close to, touching a touchdown a game. That's insane. Like that's insane. 3,000 yards in 35 games is also unbelievable. Like his production, he's the guy in this class that just has sick production. That's just put good tape, good stats, good numbers together for 3 straight years. And it hasn't mattered like at Pitt with Kenny Pickett or at USC with Caleb Williams. And, I think the biggest thing you look at when you watch him, number 1, his route running. Like he's one of the more polished route runners coming out of college. I can't say that I've seen in recent time because like Justin Jefferson was like this coming out. Jamar a little bit like this. I thought Cooper Kupp, even though he was coming out of Eastern Washington, he kind of looked like this. Like there, especially in the last 5 to 6 years, there have been more receivers that have come out with this kind of route running than ever before because I think it's just coached so much better at the college level now, and offenses at the college level and the NFL level are matching up a lot better than they used to. So I think this stuff, it's a lot more polished now than it ever has been. But in terms of his route running, Addison, like his production at USC and Pitt were both largely a product of his ability to just be open. Like no matter what the route concept was, he's just a technician. He understands like what leverage you're trying to play against him and how he can play off of that. Here's a really sick clip of him against Rice early in the game. This is his first game at USC this year. I believe this was their first game on the schedule. He's down at the bottom there.
I remember seeing that
And
one.
yeah, he just nasty, right? Like we'll play it again down there at the bottom of the screen. He's gonna run a little whip route, so he's gonna run, you know, the DB. He knows near the goal line like this, you're getting man coverage. That guy's gonna play inside leverage. So you take him inside where his leverage is, let him kind of think you're getting slant, and he's gonna try and cut off the slant, and then you just stop on a dime and spin back outside from where you came, and it's just a walk-in touchdown. So you'll see he gives him a little hezzy, inside, release. I got you beat. Nope, I'm coming back outside. Touchdown.
Yeah, when I watched that one, I was like, tough for the DB. My dude had to spin all the way around, and you're already behind based off the cut, you know?
Yeah, and I will say this: the DB, if he's playing man coverage, why are you looking back, bro? You're cheating. You're looking back at the quarterback. That's what happens. Tell DBs all the time: don't look back at that quarterback. And you're in man coverage. You get beat every time like that. So
Yeah.
DB did not play with great technique, but Jordan Addison, he did, and it nasty, played off big time. So the next thing is you combine that route running with his quickness and acceleration. Like his greatest athletic quality is that quickness in and out of breaks. He has like elite acceleration, like his ability to get to top end speed out of a break, right? He has that quickness to get in and out of a break. And then once he's out of the break, just step on the gas and be at full speed, like right away. That's like one of those things where you're like, he's pretty fast. I don't know what he'll run in the 40. Like you can see on tape, he's fast. I'm not saying he's not fast, but I think his acceleration is more important and impressive in what pops on tape than even his speed, right? His ability to get to top end speed as quick as he can out of a cut is really, really impressive. I think that's what allows him to create a lot of separation when you see him playing against DBs. I got a clip here of him against Duke while he was at Pitt. So this is his sophomore year with Kenny Pickett, right? And you can see him in the slot right here, going in motion. He runs a little slot fade, like I'm going to run out, attack your leverage, but then I'm going to come back in, and out of that cut, I'm gone. I'm just going to create, I'm going to accelerate, and I'm going to get out of that cut, and I'm gone. You can see him again. Boom, I attack your leverage outside and make you weave outside, and then I just zoom past you because I can step on that gas pedal. And you can see it in the way he ran. Like he's running the out, like I'm taking you outside, and then boom, and I step on it. And when I step on it, I'm gone.
That deep of a cut either. It was just like a quick step, and he was gone.
Yeah. And that's the other thing that I talk about. Like his route running, he understands how to play your leverage, right? Oh, you're playing me outside leverage. I'm going to take you outside. Think that you've got me where you want me. And then boom, when I step on it, I'm gone. You can't get back to me. And so that last thing is, I just think he's really, really intelligent. You can tell the fact that one, he plays at Pitt for 2 years in that system. And then two, he goes to USC and he's playing in a completely different system. He's played in, systems where, in Pitt, he played for Mark Whipple, his offensive coordinator, and then Brennan Marion, who's his receivers coach. And Brennan Marion is going to be a head coach pretty soon here. He just went from Pitt to Texas and was the Texas receivers coach last year. And now he's at UNLV as their offensive coordinator. And I think he's one of the better receiver coaches in college. I think that really helped Jordan Addison's development his sophomore year. Then he goes from that and he goes to play for Lincoln Riley at USC, who's arguably the best offensive mind in college football right now. And, then he plays with Kenny Pickett at quarterback and Caleb Williams at quarterback, who are two very cerebral guys who I think have high expectations of their receivers. Like, you better make sure you're on point with what they're thinking. You're reading coverages the same way. So I just think the ways that he was used, especially at USC, he's really intelligent in his understanding of defenses and where and how to run his routes. Like, they did all kinds of stuff with him. They lined him up in the slot, outside, in the backfield. He lined up everywhere, and all they were trying to do is create mismatches for him, right? But you have to have a guy who understands what you're trying to do offensively in order to do that with him. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we're going to look at a clip here of him at USC against UCLA this year. And so you see the arrow showing he's actually in the backfield. He's lined up at running back right now. So USC has a nice little 12 personnel look, right? With the tight end wing, little Detroit pair, tight end wing to the boundary with Addison to him, and then two receivers to the field. Now, Lincoln Riley, this is why he's like a genius. This is Lincoln Riley's way of getting into like a bunch set, right? because he has his tight end and then the U or the mover sitting on the hip, and then Jordan Addison, who's lined up at running back, but is really a receiver. So it's really like creating that bunch look without actually having bunch. So you can see UCLA is having to figure out how they're going to adjust to this, right? And so we'll see how it plays out, but it's one of those things that like you only do this with a receiver if you feel like he can handle it. And so they run a nice bunch concept, right? One in, one out, and then Addison running vertical. And he ends up on a linebacker, complete mismatch, crushes him. Again, attacks that leverage, finds the seam. I'm gone. You're not going to cover me. I'm going to outrun a linebacker every time. Gone. And so, when I watch his game, all the things that I'm talking about, the route running, the quickness and acceleration in and out of cuts, the intelligence, the ability to just move them around, find the mismatch, say, hey, this is what you're going to do in this game, Jordan. This is how we're going to be successful. It is very reminiscent to me of Cooper Kupp. He's not quite, his frame isn't quite as big as Cooper. Like Cooper is a little bit thicker. And I don't know, Jordan Addison gets to the NFL, eats right, that kind of stuff. Not to say that USC and Pitt didn't have great strength and conditioning programs, because I'm sure they do. I'm sure he was trying to put that weight on, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So his body may not be quite that, but even as he gets in the NFL, matures a little bit, becomes a man, and he's working with an NFL strength and conditioning program and meal plan and all those kinds of things. Maybe he can develop a little bit of this, but in terms of the way he plays in his game, he looks a lot like Cooper Kupp to me. So as I was watching his film, and I saw that play of him against UCLA that we just watched, it reminded me instantly of a play that McVay ran with Cooper Kupp during their Super Bowl year. So this was actually 2 years ago in like week 4, I think, week 3. Matthew Stafford's still kind of new with the Rams. Yeah. Coop is new, or is new to Matthew Stafford, but they did this right here where they put Cooper Kupp in the backfield. Similar kind of deal, right? They're going to try and create that mismatch with a linebacker in the red zone. Runs the same little vertical route. You see how he attacks that leverage and then gets back inside? Same thing that we kind of saw from Jordan Addison, right, on the play against Pitt, where he attacked that outside leverage, comes back underneath, bursts out of the cut, right, the acceleration, and then it's a touchdown. So it's like all that, the route running, the intelligence, the adaptability, the quickness and acceleration out of the cut, like those all things that remind me of Jordan Addison. That's why Cooper Kupp is always open. And I think that's why Jordan Addison is always open. I think they're very similar that way. If I have a worry about that sort of comp, it's more or less the difference in their frame, and their size and their really their thickness of their body and the ability to absorb hits. Cooper's really, really been durable because he could absorb those hits. We'll see if Jordan Addison turns out that way, but I do think his game really closely resembles Cooper Kupp's. What do you see, Joe?
Yeah, so when you just off rip, when you were mentioning his strengths, it seemed like we saw this guy very similarly.
Mm-hmm.
You also mentioned this dude earlier. You mentioned Jamar. I saw him like that, just like you said, size difference, a little bit smaller than him. I even wrote down Deshaun Jackson. Obviously, I don't think he's as fast as him, but that's someone I see similar to him. And then I talked about I said he was really quick, like you said, with him getting in and out of the cuts. And I said he had nice routes from what I seen. And then even today, I didn't even know he was at Pitt, because the first highlights I seen was like just strictly USC.
Yeah.
And then today I seen a different video just to double up, make sure I seen what I seen. And I was like, oh shoot, this dude's at Pitt.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was cool. Let's see. Breakdown year by year, he had 59 catches in 2020, 666 yards, 4 touchdowns in that first year. 2021, he had 100 catches. This is where you're saying that receiver coach, this might have some truth to that. 100 catches, 1,600 yards almost, 17 touchdowns. And then 2022, 60 catches, 875 yards, 8 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And then my standout game, we seen a highlight from it. It was USC UCLA. USC was ranked 7. UCLA was 16. They won 48-45. He had 11 catches, 178 yards, a touchdown with an average of 16.2.
Yeah. He's the kind of guy that's going to show up in the big game. Like in all honesty, his year at USC with Caleb Williams, I think a lot of people were expecting more just because he had the year you mentioned at Pitt the year before with Kenny Pickett, right?
Yeah.
And pairing him with Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley, it was just like, wow, like this is going to be special. And they were. He was banged up a little bit. I think at the end of the year, Caleb Williams was banged up a little bit. So it never quite material. And then also like figure they all had one offseason together. They had like 4 months to get themselves ready to go play, right? So a little different, but in the grand scheme of things, like especially in the big games, he showed up and he was really good. Like you said, you talked about him at UCLA. That was a big time game, and he was ready to go for it. So I think he's that kind of guy. He's what our high school head coach would call a gamer. So right now, I think about what he can do for an offense. And I think in the NFL, he should be primarily used from the slot. I think an offense that we put him in the slot and let him maximize that route running, maximize the route running tree, but also be creative enough to move him around a little bit like Lincoln Riley did at USC. I think that maximizes his matchup potential. If you can get him on linebackers and safeties more than corners or slot, nickel guys, you're going to have more success just because his route running and his acceleration out of those breaks are so good. So I think an offense that will let him be in the slot, but then move him around a little bit to explore matchups, I think that's the kind of offense he needs to be in. Right now, a lot of team, they're saying he's going in the mock drafts for sure, another first round pick. A lot of mocks have him between 8 and 22, so a little lower. His ceiling and his floor a little bit lower than Quentin Johnston, and I'm gonna guess that's just the measurables. He's only 6', 175, whereas Johnston's 6'4", 215. So there's a big difference in the size and frame there, but I think his production is what makes him so high because he's a guy who's always open, and that's always a guy you could use in the NFL. Even if he's not necessarily a big play guy, and I think Addison is, but even guys who aren't necessarily the big play guys who are just always open, those are the guys that 3rd and 5 get you first downs and keep the sticks moving. And so worst case scenario, he's that kind of player. So some interested teams. We see some similar faces, some new faces here. Titans, Patriots, Buccaneers, and Chargers. Joe, you have a preference where you'd like to see him?
I hate to say it, but I think he'd do well with the Chargers. They always need a receiver for one, and two is just you get those other dudes. They're gonna have someone they take them lightly. You got Keenan Allen one side, maybe Mike Williams the other, with him at the slot. Like there's a mismatch somewhere. You try to guard him, the other dudes are open. So that would be insane to watch. Bucks, I don't really know how I feel about that. I don't know who they're going with at QB.
Yeah.
Now they lost our guy TB12. But yeah, I mean Chargers would be ideal, I think, for him. And then Titans again, just another need in general.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a feeling the Titans are going to show up maybe a couple more times. The Titans really feel like they need a receiver. I've kind of talked about the Titans and the Patriots. I think he might be a better fit with the Patriots even than Quentin Johnston. Feels a little bit of more of that like every down kind of receiver. Like we want to get him the ball as much as possible kind of guy.
Like a Julian Edelman.
Yeah, a little bit like that. They haven't had a guy like that since Edelman retired. You look at the Buccaneers, it would be an interesting one just because you're right. They don't know who their quarterback is. They have a new offensive coordinator. I'm not sure what they're planning on doing. You have Mike Evans there, feels like he's been there forever. He's getting a little bit longer in the tooth. Not old necessarily yet, but a little bit older. You had Chris Godwin, who I believe they had to franchise tag last year, and I do think maybe they got a deal done with him. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But even if one of those guys could be moving on, maybe that's where you grab Addison as a replacement, or you say, hey, this is a guy who would fit in well with both those guys. I know that Godwin really works out of the slot, so you might have to kind of move Addison and Godwin around to make that work. Not sure how they would work that out. Chargers kind of similar, right? Keenan Allen really likes to work out of the slot. Mike Williams obviously is a big guy outside. Have heard some rumors about Keenan Allen maybe being a cap casualty, so maybe that's where Addison comes in if you're thinking of moving on from Keenan Allen either this year or the next. Maybe the best case scenario for the Chargers is to have them both this year and then let Keenan Allen move on the next year. And so that's where, again, you would have to kind of get creative with who's playing in the slot, who's playing outside, maybe playing a lot more 10 personnel sets where you can allow those guys to both play in the slot, or 11P where you're splitting the tight end out, you know. The Chargers are also in transition to a new offensive coordinator. So a lot of interesting moving pieces with these teams here, but I think none of them could go wrong with saying, hey, we'd like to have a Jordan Addison, a guy who's just always going to be open, you know, to help their new offensive coordinators. So, Joe, who's next?
Yeah, this one's an interesting one. We got Jackson Smith-Njigba out of the Ohio State University. I mean, he's 6'1", 200. He's a little bit thicker frame from what I've seen. He played 23 games in that uniform, 110 catches, almost 1,700 yards, 10 touchdowns. Average yards per catch, he had 15.4. This one's interesting just because he just didn't play that much last year, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how it goes. And even that first year, 2020, it's like tough in the, you know, COVID. It's COVID season. It was tough all around. So he only really had one standout year. And so, yeah, I'll let you get into your strengths and whatnot.
Yeah, Jackson Smith-Njigba is an interesting case, right? Ohio State has been putting out receivers recently.
Yeah,
you know,
true.
Olave was really good this last year as a rookie. So was my dude with the Jets. Totally blanking on his name right now. What's his name? You remember, Joe? Help me out
The only
there.
dude I could think of is like Mike, but I know that's not him.
Yeah. Help me out. We'll get research on that one. They'll come back to me. You know, so they've been putting out receivers, you know. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be the next one who's coming out next year. So they just been putting out these receivers who are incredible. And, you know, JSN was really, really good as a sophomore. Didn't get to see the field as much as a freshman, really good as a sophomore. And then he gets hurt with his hamstring in their first game against Notre Dame this year, and then just doesn't play the rest of the year. Kind of very similar to a guy who turned out to be pretty good, Jamar Chase, who did not play in that COVID year, right, at all, and then comes out in the draft, is a top 5 pick, and then ends up being a dude. So we've seen that, like, you don't necessarily have to play football your last year of college to still come out and be awesome. I wouldn't recommend it for everybody, but there's certain elite, special athletic guys who can do it. And I would say Jackson Smith-Njigba is one of those. So, yeah, the production doesn't quite match up with some of the other guys just because he didn't have the same amount of games. As you said, you know, he has the COVID-shortened freshman year. He has his true sophomore, you know, long year, and then he has one game this year. And so, you know, for him, I think the production isn't there, but what you do see on the film from the limited production is a really awesome player. My first thing that I think about, he's the guy in this class that I just trust their hands the most. Like, he just made some incredible acrobatic catches during his 2 years and change at Ohio State. He really has like super strong hands. The play that instantly came to my mind when I was kind of thinking about,
so with that big M right there, I think I know exactly what this is.
Yeah, I this was the play that instantly came to mind when I said, hey, I'm going to look at him. This is 3rd and 19 in the game in 2021 when Ohio State went to the Big House and lost to Michigan. But during that game, while they were kind of trying to mount a comeback here, it's 3rd and 19, and you know, you're going to see the quarterback is going to get flushed from the pocket, really has nowhere to go, and kind of just says, all right, I know my guy JSN is down there. I'm just going to give it to him. You know, it's the meme, right? Jamar down there somewhere, like Jackson down there somewhere. Just give him the ball, right? So he's working out of the slot, kind of see how this play develops, right? Flush out of the pocket. I'm looking, nowhere to really throw. Okay, DB's back is turned. I'm just going to throw it. And he really catches it like on the dude's back, but like his hands are going through the defender and still like he can't really see it, and he just still finds a way to reel it in. Like super
It's like a real life
strong.
Madden right there. Where you just,
Yeah. One of
they're
those
like
Madden
running
glitch
and it just
plays.
lands in their hand. Yeah, that's literally what that looks like. It's insane.
Yeah, the Madden glitch play where you throw in the controller because you're like, "There's no way that would ever happen." Well, Jackson Smith
Yeah.
and Jigba just made it happen. Yeah, and that's one of the better ones. But there are other ones. I mean, he has one in the Rose Bowl against Utah that year that was just incredible. He has hands for days. He catches everything that comes his way. I think that's one of those things where you just, as a quarterback, you could feel comfortable just throwing the ball to him in that kind of situation, just because you feel like, hey, he's going to come up with it. The next thing I noticed from him, the physicality. Like he plays receiver with a nasty attitude, which is not something that you see all the time. These are the things like I think of Deebo Samuel. I think of Jamar Chase. Like I think of those guys who just play with the physicality to their game at the receiver position. The OG dude who at this Anquan Bolden, right? Guys who just like they punish you as a receiver. And I love that. I love when a receiver plays not only with like a attitude, but like an edge, like that chip. Yeah, like it's more than just I'm better than you. It's like I'm gonna punish you for even being out here with me.
Yeah.
And he gave the Ohio State offense an edge, which I think a lot of times there were moments where their offense did lack some physicality, and he being in the game gave some that back to them a little bit. I think the way he blocks, the way he runs after the catch, the way he catches the ball. Like he just does everything with a true physicality to his game. Here's the clip that we've got from in 2021 against Indiana. Again, working out of the slot here. Just the presence he has after he catches the ball. Boom, I'm going to make the catch. I'm going to break one tackle. I'm going to break another tackle. I'm going to finish this. Like I'm going to make you feel me. It's going to take 4 of you to bring me down before I get close to the end zone, right? Like you guys gotta put your face on me and make sure that you're gonna put me on the ground with multiple guys to the ball if that's gonna happen, right? And I just think that the edge he plays with can really change an offense, just by allowing him to go out there and block and run with the ball after the catch. Again, we watch it here. He breaks that first initial tackle, runs through the next guy. You see how he pops up too, and he's just like, I love that. I love when a receiver plays that way because it just gives your offense a different kind of life. You know what I mean? That energy and physicality. Your offensive line is looking at that, and they're like, let's go. Your quarterback's looking at that, like, let me get that guy the ball again. The running back's looking at that, like, I need to run that way. That's a receiver. I need to go run like that. You know what I'm saying? As a coach on the sideline, I'm like, hey, I need to get that guy the ball. You know what I'm saying? It inspires everybody. That's the kind of stuff that you need on your team. And then finally, his releases and route running. He's just like Addison. He can run all the routes in the route tree. He's a technician with his feet and his hands off the line of scrimmage. Like dudes cannot press him because he's too big and physical, but he's also super technical with his ability to just pop and get by you with his hands and feet at the line of scrimmage. And I think that's a rare combination of being, truly a technician while also being able to, go be a really physical ball player. So again, another play from 21 here. I think this was against Tulsa at the shoe, right? Again, he's working out of the slot. So he releases inside to run that dig route. I mean, it's just pretty. He says, okay, this guy has inside leverage. I'm going to release inside. I'm going to stem inside to get inside the leverage of the DB. Because now once he has that, he knows he can run away from this guy, right?
Yeah.
And then he gets back vertical because he knows his route has to be at a certain depth for the route concept to work. And he's going to put his shoulder on that guy and then leave him, right? So I'm going to stem inside, get vertical, put my shoulder on this guy, and then I'm going to lean, and bow and get out of the break. And once I get out of the break, see how that separation he creates?
Yeah.
Nasty. Technician. So that's where he can combine that physicality and the body that he has with the technique. And I think he's a really polished player for being a guy who only played really one full season. Yeah. He's a really, really polished player. I was very impressed with him. I think he was a guy that impressed me more on tape than anyone else I watched in terms of what my perception was coming in without really having just kind of watched them throughout the year, but hadn't watched a lot of the tape. He was a guy who popped for me that I was like, okay, he's better maybe than I even gave him credit for initially. He did a lot more on film than I even thought he would. Now, in terms of his pro comparison, again, I think maybe people might think that this comparison is somehow means I think he's a not as good a player as Addison or Quentin Johnston, because I compared those guys to Julio Jones and Cooper Kupp, who are both like two of the greatest receivers to play, the last 10 years. Juju Smith-Schuster isn't necessarily that guy, at least not now. Injuries have really kind of taken away some of his abilities, and yet that guy's a Super Bowl winning receiver, was just like the best receiver on the Super Bowl winning team. So it's not I hope that people don't think that I'm saying, oh, he's Juju, and that's somehow a slight compared to the other guys, because I don't think it is. I think when you watch his game, that big body physical slot, that's who I think of, Juju, especially that year that Juju had, I think it was his second year, where he had like 1,700 yards, right, with Big Ben. That's the kind of guy, that's the kind of Juju I'm thinking of when I talk about Jackson Smith-Njigba. Like, this is that 2017 year Juju working out of the slot on 3rd and 10, right, here against Dallas. And you can see, like, I got one-on-one coverage. Boom, I beat the leverage. I get inside. I run away. I'm a big body. You're not going to have fun tackling me. I'm a pop up. I've got that intensity that inspires everyone, right? Like, you can see the shades of the route running technique with the physicality, with that body, those things coming out of the slot. Like, that's any offense could use that. I really like Jackson Smith-Njigba. Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think I had a couple comps for this guy. I wasn't really sure who I wanted to roll with, but I think one of them was kind of like solidified when you talked about his physicality. I'd said CD and Devontae, and it kind of ties in with how you talked about his route running as well. I said for him that he was good at creating separation, and we've seen it when he bumped off the dude with his shoulder, right? And then cut outside, and then I also said he was good at finding pockets in the defense. Like, he would be able to like chill in that little zone, get the catch, and then burst out of there. But like I mentioned earlier, he didn't have much of 2 years really. So 2020 COVID year, he had 10 catches, 50 yards, and a touchdown. 2021, 95 catches, 1,600 yards, 9 touchdowns. 2022, 5 catches, 43 yards.
Crazy that like 1,698 yards, 1,600 of them came in 1 year. Unbelievable. That's so crazy.
And yeah, my standout game for this man, it was the Rose Bowl, as you mentioned earlier. They won 48-45 against Utah. 15 catches. Do you want to guess how many yards this man had?
Wasn't it like 300 yards?
347. 3 touchdowns.
He may not have the 3-year production that anyone has, but his single game production is above all else. Like, unbelievable. He had almost 400 yards. He almost had a quarter of his receiving yards in one game.
The Rose Bowl.
I love that.
Yeah, and then just a quick little backtrack. You were talking about Garrett Wilson earlier, guy from the Jets.
Thank you. Stats and info there. Yes, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and the next year you'll be hearing about Marvin Harrison Jr. So the Ohio State receivers, they've been putting them out. Credit to Ohio State. So when we look at kind of where mock drafts have him right now, again, he's another surefire first-round pick. These are the these first three that we talked about, that are pretty much locks to be in the first round based on everything you see. His ceiling and floor a little lower than Addison and Johnston. He's picked 12 to 27 right now from what I've seen. I still think he could be a top 10 pick personally. Which may be giving away where I'm kind of leaning with these guys when we reveal our rankings. But some teams in the mix for him, the Ravens. When you think of the Ravens as a football team, does that not make perfect sense with the way we described him today?
Yeah, no, it
Oh,
does.
man.
And the lack of their receiving core, they just rely on Mark Andrews. Like, they could use him for sure.
A couple other teams here: the Bears, the Giants, and the Chiefs. Joe, I don't know. Maybe we already alluded to it, but is there a team there that you would love to see him with?
I think just this is based off of an interview I heard. The Bears, I know Justin Fields alluded to that he would love to have him on that
Yeah,
core. Makes
yeah.
sense. I mean, he would definitely need some young weapons. I know he got Chase Claypool last year,
Hmm.
and he's had oh man, what's his name? He's had another dude there the 2 years he's been there, but it's just another great pickup for them. Get that guy with the chip on his shoulder, similar to how I feel probably Justin Fields plays with himself. And
Hmm.
then Giants would be interesting, just because they're about to probably cut one of their dudes, so that'd be interesting to see how he would play there. And the Chiefs, that would be insane, just adding on to the fire that they've had burning the past 3 years, just going insane.
Yeah. You're thinking of Darnell Mooney for the Bears. That's the
Yeah,
receiver you're thinking of. So personally, this is one of the ones where I'm like, man, if he was on any of these teams, I kind of love it. Like you said, the Ravens, I think that would be a perfect place for him to go. The way he plays football and the way that they play football, I think it would be a great mix. I think he's tough, like Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson and J.K. Dobbins. Like I just think he would add to that offense big time and give them a real slot weapon. The Bears, the natural fit with Justin Fields, like they were teammates in 2020. Obviously, that would be ideal. The Giants, another team that could use a slot receiver, like a go-to guy like this, would be awesome for Daniel Jones going forward. And then the Chiefs, it's like an embarrassment of riches there. Like, okay, they have Kelsey. They drafted Sky Moore. They've got, you know, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They do have Juju, but like I said, Juju is somewhat diminished of who he was. And I wonder if they like Juju. I just compared this guy to younger Juju. Just bring this guy in and you can let Juju kind of go, and
Yeah.
like this might be an upgrade over what you have in Juju right now, just because I do think they're very similar players. And I think Jackson Smith-Njigba is just sort of the younger, still more athletic version of what Juju is now. I think he would be insane with Patrick Mahomes. So any of these, I honestly would love to see him go to any one of these four teams. I think he would be fun on any of the four because I think
Yeah, I can see
all
that.
four could use this guy coming out of the slot. He'll be a thick-bodied, physical slot receiver. They'll use him at all three levels. Any team would be smart to use him at all three levels in their route progressions. It's going to add an attitude, a playmaker. It's a polished route runner like that. Those are the things that any one of those four teams could use for sure. So I think, going forward, that's definitely a guy I have my eye on.
So next guy we're looking at Kayshon Boutte from LSU. He's 6 foot, 205. Got 27 games, 131 catches, 1782 yards, 16 touchdowns with an average of 13.6 yards on those.
All right, well, we're just going to start with the elephant in the room. This guy got kicked out of LSU in January because he was at like a sex party that included like a female staffer and coaches, and everyone who was a part of that whole thing either got fired, moved on to another job, or got kicked out of school. Do I think that affects his draft stock? I don't know why it would. I mean, it's maybe not a red flag, but like a yellow flag of like, all right, what are you doing? It's not a good decision making. But I don't know how much he gets penalized for that. So we'll see. In terms of what he does on the football field, though, I think he has some serious strengths that made him, a pretty good player at LSU. Kind of like Jackson Smith-Njigba, where he really only had like the one true year of production. This year, he was really kind of banged up in and out of the lineup. So again, didn't have quite as many games, but what he did do is he scored a lot in the games that he did play in. In terms of his first big strength to me, his awareness. Like he just had a knack for getting into the end zone or getting his feet down in bounds, or like, all right, it's 3rd and 3. He catches the ball a yard short of the sticks. He reaches it and gets the first down, right? Or it's 4th down. same thing. He like finds a way to get to the sticks and get the first down. So his awareness on the football field, I just think he kind of has that innate ability to understand exactly where he is and be able to go pick up that first down. You know what I'm saying? Or go get into the end zone or make sure his feet are down inbounds. I thought he did a really good job of this in multiple games that I watched. I just felt like he was constantly like doing things that I was like, oh wow, he got his feet down. So here's a pretty good example of one against Kentucky. This was actually in 2021. He finds the ball in the air and he gets those feet down. It actually looks like he might have come up hurt on this play, but like if you see it from this view, it's pretty good. That's an NFL catch. He got both feet down. And it's kind of a pop-up throw. He's kind of working against the DB, like trying to fight for leverage and position, and then still like comes up with the ball. I just thought this was a pretty incredible play. He's got to turn his entire body, right? He's running up the sideline with his back to the sideline. Then he has to turn his chest to the sideline, get his feet in bounds, come down, roll to make sure he doesn't lose the ball on impact with the ground. All of that, I thought his awareness was just, that was a great display of it right there. I thought the next thing, he plays with a lot of toughness, where I think this is a rare trait for receivers, right? Like it's one thing to play physical. I think it's another thing to play tough, right? Like tough is I just ate a hit on a catch and still made the catch. Tough is like I break a tackle that, I could have easily allowed myself to just go down, but I'm gonna get that extra 2 yards, right? Yeah. And so a large chunk of his explosive plays came from broken tackles. Like he makes those contested catches with the hit, hangs onto the ball, right? All those things I was talking about. He plays really, really tough. I think that's part of why he was hurt a little bit at times, because he plays so tough and he just never, he's that kind of guy who will never say die, like just ever. And you love that about a player, and so here he is in the slot working against the eventual national champions, Georgia, who he ate up, by the way. Yeah. Cool. He runs the little in cut. Is that a preview, Joe? Yeah. He breaks a tackle, right? And says like literally get off me, breaks 2 more all the way to the end zone. And like these are little ankle tackles that like some guys they may have gotten caught on, Here's another one though. Right at the sticks, he makes the catch, like takes a good hit, takes a lick, right? And still makes the catch. Yeah. And we'll run it back one more time. But like again, he catches the ball, broken tackle 1, broken tackle 2, broken tackle 3, and kind of 3.5 there at the end. And then again, same thing, working out of the slot. I run the route right to the sticks. This guy knows that's where I'm running my route. He's going to pop me on impact, right? As soon as I catch the ball, I'm going to get popped. And I still catch it, and I still fall forward. Think about that, the mechanics of that, like the physics of I catch the ball going back towards the line of scrimmage. This guy is running full speed behind me, breaking on the ball, hits me in my back with my back to him, and I still manage to power through that and land falling forward. Like that's a dude who's playing tough and he's thick, right? You mentioned like the 6 foot 205. He's a thick bodied little receiver, which makes him hard for guys to tackle. That's why he has, again, kind of similar to Quentin Johnston, but in a different way, that yak ability. Johnston's is I got a little wiggle and I can get straight line speed vertical fast. Yeah. Kayshon Boutte is like, I'm going to run with the ball after the catch like a running back. Super strong lower body. He breaks a lot of tackles. He can weave through defenders like we just kind of saw, right, against Georgia. Another clip of it here against UCLA in 2021. Really, really, fun play actually in this game. This was a fun game that year, if you remember. I think this is what opened the year, if I remember right, and it was a really good game. But here you go. He's working outside, right? He runs the little curl route at the sticks, makes the catch, cut in, back out, break a tackle, break another arm tackle, break another one right into the end zone, right? I mean, the strength in his lower body, if you try and chop his legs, he just doesn't go down. Like if you just go kind of dive at his ankles and you dive at that knee, he does not go down. His legs are too strong. Like he breaks 2 tackles here where guys are diving at that waist. And again, you can see it really well from this angle. In, back out, dive at the legs. Nope. Dive at the legs. Nope. I'm going to break those tackles. I'm going to keep my legs moving, my knees high. They can't bring them down. That yak ability, that ability to make a 10-yard play into a touchdown is something that every offense would love to have. And that is why when I watch him, guy who instantly came to mind for me was Deebo Samuel. Like almost immediately, just because I was like, okay, it's the same kind of smaller, compact, super thick, super tough receiver who just understands football, is very aware of where he is on the field, and can break tackles and run like a running back when you get the ball in his hands. So I got a good clip here of Deebo against the Eagles working out of the slot in 2021. Very similar play to kind of the one we just watched with Booty at UCLA. Runs a little in cut, breaks a tackle, breaks another tackle, right? Like those arm tackles, he's too tough for that. You're going to try and arm tackle him or dive at his ankles, dive at his knee. You're just not going to bring that guy down. And that's they have that same kind of body type. They run very similarly with those high knees, and they're thick and hard to tackle after the catch. So that's my comp for him. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, obviously the size is more comparable in this scenario for you. But what I came up with DK is what he looked like to me. Obviously, size being accounted for. But I kind of think when you're talking about his toughness, just reminds me of everything DK does. He gets the ball and it's just straight power once he has it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, so what I've seen from him, he has great hands, and I think he's versatile. You showed a couple clips. He's playing inside, he's playing outside.
Mm-hmm.
Just you could put him wherever, and he's gonna go make a play for sure. Let's see his stats over the years. In 2020, he had 45 catches, 735 yards, 5 touchdowns. In 2021, 38 catches, 509 yards, 9 touchdowns. And then 2022, 48 catches, 538 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then as you mentioned earlier, the preview from that game against UGA, they lost 50-30. But he had 6 catches, 107 yards, and a touchdown. And even in the losing effort, like he's still there balling for the squad. You know, that kind of ties back into like the dog that we talk about during the season. It's just you can't just give up and roll over. You know, you just got to keep on powering through, and that's what I've seen from those stats.
For sure. I think what you said, him being versatile, I think, you look at what he could do for an offense, he'll be successful in an offense that primarily uses him from the slot. I think that's where he'll be really good, at least early, but then also being as creative as possible in the ways that they give him touches. He's by far definitely a guy who I would consider giving like jet sweeps to, maybe even putting him in the backfield, handing the ball off to him. Not quite Deebo, where he's like running back / slot, but like in a kind of Deebo-esque role, right? Where he's in the slot a lot. But like you said, he's versatile enough. You could work him outside a little bit, depending on their route concept, what you want to do with him. You can work him, out of the backfield. You can do some different stuff with him because he's tough enough to do those other things, and he'll go do it. So I do think, putting him in the slot, but then also being creative with his touches, getting him as many creative touches as possible. Currently, he's a borderline first, second round guy. He's either going to be back half the first round, top of the second round is what it looks like. Right now, I've seen him mocked anywhere from pick 19 to pick 36. You see teams like the Buccaneers, who we've talked about before, the Giants, who we've talked about before, the Chiefs, and now a new team enters the fray, the Colts. A team that could certainly use a receiver, but at the top of the draft will probably be focusing on quarterback. And so if they are able to get back up again in the second round at the top, that might be a spot where Kayshon Boutte could go. So, Joe, any last thoughts on Kayshon?
Yeah, I think the Chiefs is probably like a realistic one in this scenario, just based off where his projection is currently. And then even the Colts, I don't know if they truly need a receiver. Like I feel like they have a bunch of young dudes already, but maybe they could use his skill set in their offense is what that one's more like geared to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, again, another team in transition they're going to have a new offensive coordinator. It depends on what that guy wants to do, what kind of quarterback they're getting. But yes, like maybe he could be a guy that, you have Jonathan Taylor as a playmaker, you have Michael Pittman as a playmaker. Maybe you add Booty as less of a receiver, more of we need a third playmaker in this offense. Yeah, I agree with you. I could see that.
Yeah, so looking forward, we got Zay Flowers out of BC, Boston College. Smaller guy compared to everyone else that we've talked about, 5'10", 172. He is that 4 years that he played? Is that what I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at? Let's see, 48 games over that span, 200
Yeah, wow.
catches, 3,056 yards. That's impressive, but that's 4 years. Let's see, 29 touchdowns over that span and 15.3 on those yards per catch.
Yeah, Zay Flowers, smaller guy. Didn't know as much about him. Had heard some stuff about him. Didn't watch a lot of Boston College football this year, to be honest with you.
Um,
Knew who he had heard his name, but just hadn't tuned in, hadn't tapped into him. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And I turned on the film and I was like, whoa, this is the other guy. And I told you Jackson Smith and Jigba. Zay Flowers was the other one. Those were the two that of all the receivers I watched this last week, these were the two that popped the most on film in terms of what I went into thinking, what I came out of it thinking.
Uh-huh.
You look at, yes, he played 4 years in college, and so he had a lot more games under his belt, but I also thought he had a little bit more consistent. You could see the steady rise in production. And Joe, I know you'll talk about that kind of year to year, what he looked like. But just on film, one of the big things that I saw, his acceleration, kind of similar to Addison. I think if you're a smaller guy like Addison or Zay Flowers, and Zay Flowers is even, two more inches smaller than Addison, you have to have that either game-breaking speed or unbelievable acceleration. And in the case of Zay Flowers, he has both.
Yeah.
He has game-breaking speed, but elite acceleration gets him the top end of his speed as quick as anybody in the draft. It's for real. I think he and Addison are neck and neck in terms of who can get to top end speed fastest. Their 10-yard splits, I'd be really interested to see as opposed to their 40s. Their 40s are great, but I wonder what their 10-yard splits are, or even what with these guys. I'll get to his change of a direction in a second, but their 5-10-5, that touch back. I bet he has an elite time in that, because his just get up and go is, man, he goes 0 to 60 really quick. So here's a play, for him this past year against Virginia. You can't see him in the screen. He's actually at the top here, and we'll get a better look of it, from the behind. You can see, obviously, he got behind the defender, but he's at that little stop on a dime, be able to pop and go.
Yeah. There it is.
So here you go. You can see it. Oh, that's so nasty. The little stutter and how quick he can get out of the break, out of the stutter. We'll watch it one more time because it's just so nasty. Again, from this angle, you can't really see him at the top. You can see the ending. Where we really want to see it is from the zoomed in version of him. He's running off the line, and he gets off the line quick. This guy's got his hips turned. Oh, stop. Nope, I'm gone. Adios.
Sync, dude, it's crazy.
Yeah, he sinks those hips on the break. Yeah. That acceleration, nasty. Good luck. The next thing I noticed for this guy, his catch radius. For being, okay, generally the little guys, you're not all right, this guy makes every catch outside of his body, but he seriously makes these catches outside of his body their routine, straight up. He can go up and catch it, or he can go down and scoop a ball off the turf. He can do it all. I saw him make some catches over people where it's he's dunking on guys. I'm man, he's 5'10", and he's doing that. That's impressive, Here's a clip of him running. He runs a little slot fade in the red zone here. You can see him right here working out of the slot. And his quarterback trusts him so much, he just kind of puts it up there. And you can see he goes down to get it, right? Through the guy, down to the catch point, scoops it before it can hit the turf. right? Like he makes catches like that all the time. Like he was a focal point in their offense because they were just like, hey, if you just throw it in his vicinity, he's probably gonna go catch it. You know what I mean?
Even
Uh,
you even see at the end of that, he like stops so he could like make the catch. It's not like he's like falling backwards and doing. He literally stopped and tried to
yeah.
fall forward as best as possible.
Here's another one where he just goes through a guy. Like he's just gonna go find the football in the air, and his catch radius, he's ridiculous and carries the
And a
guy into the end
touchdown.
zone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what separates him for real from like other smaller guys that I've seen. That even those guys who are fast and do accelerate, man, he catches everything thrown his way. His catch radius is sick. And then lastly, his change of direction, like whether it's in his route or after the catch. I think you even saw that in some of these clips already. He has elite COD, like it jumps off the screen when you're watching it. That combined with his quickness makes him like a monster to cover or tackle. And you watch him here against this one's so not fair. It's so mean. Here he is against Duke. Just man, if you're watching, you're in for a treat right now. Here he goes. So he's gonna come down. Then he's gonna come back. No, coming back right out the back door. COD is like this DB had no chance, dude. His just ability to like flip the hips and just nope, nope, nope. I'm going back. Nope. There you go. See ya. Adios. Touchdown. Does that play not look familiar? Maybe the Super Bowl, if you will, a little zipper motion. Yep. Yep. So his COD, man, like his COD, his acceleration, the catch radius, like all that. So I'm watching him, and he was the only guy that while I was watching, I didn't have one like instantly pop in my head, like after I'd watched 3 or 4 clips, right? The other guys, I all had that guy in my head. And as I kept watching, I just kind of kept reaffirming, like, yep, that's what I'm seeing. Yep. Zay Flowers, I was sitting there thinking, man, this is a tougher comp. Because I don't remember a guy this kind of smaller in stature having this kind of catching ability. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
With the acceleration, the change of direction, like, and then I just kept watching him, and I realized who I thought he looked like. Stefon Diggs. Like that's what Stefon Diggs does, and Stefon Diggs is a little bit bigger, but what he does so well, what makes him so good, is his just same thing. That change of direction and his catch radius are the things that I think of when I think of Diggs, and that's what I think of when I watch Zay Flowers. So like I found this clip of Diggs here against the Jets this last year. I'm working out of the slot here. That little whoop whoop, the whip route, kind of similar to the play we just watched from Zay Flowers. And then that, you see how it just quickly he accelerates and then he kind of stops and he can go. Like all that, like stop and go, herky jerky. I'm in and out of cuts. I'm in and out of breaks. After the catch, you're gonna have a real tough time corralling me. Like that, like you're trying to like chase a pig and you just can't get to him. Like they change direction so quick. They stop on a dime. Like that's what they have in common. And then you combine that with like Stefon Diggs is just an elite catcher of the football, just like Zay Flowers. I think they're very similar players despite the difference in stature. So, Joe, what were you thinking when you saw him?
Yeah, so just off the like my quick notes for him, I said he was quick and shifty. We seen it. Just like that play when he was going in motion, he's a troop, troop, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I said he has major yak ability from what I was watching.
Yeah,
It's insane. My dude's just he's just
the
running up and down
yak,
the field.
the
Yeah.
yak in this class is insane.
Yeah, and then for my comms, like you said, it was tough to do. I went a little bit older with some of these guys. I had Julian Edelman written down, and
Mm,
I had Robert Woods. I was thinking of for a little bit,
okay,
and
okay,
then Cooper Cup maybe. That one was a
okay.
little iffy. I didn't know how I felt about that one, just because like size, intangibles, like he's a little thicker dude than him. But
Yeah,
but yeah, I was trying to compare it, and I
I
was like,
like the
man.
Robert Woods one actually. I think that one's pretty good too. Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I was looking at that, and then we break down his numbers. So his freshman year, 2019, 22 catches, 341 on the yards, 3 touchdowns. And as you mentioned earlier too, we'll see the progression that he pretty much does better each year. So
Yep.
2020, he had 56 catches, almost 900 yards, 9 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
2021, 44 catches, 746 yards, 5 touchdowns. Then last year, 78 catches, 1,077 yards and 12 touchdowns.
Yep. He pretty much steadily increases as he goes through his career. And I think that's a nice thing to see when you're looking at this. It's always nice because you feel like that means that guy was constantly working to improve and he always got better. So you feel like that'll carry over to the next level, which is not like a hit on a guy who didn't do that. For instance, Jackson Smith-Njigba had the one big year, because there have been plenty of guys who had one big year, Ja'Marr Chase, and then came in and they're just that guy. They just didn't, for whatever reason, their college career kind of worked out where they just had the one big year. And it's not that they aren't consistently that guy, it's just that it happened one year. For Zay, you can see the steady improvement, which you like because you feel like that'll translate to the NFL.
Yeah, and then my one standout game for him, I'm surprised this is the only time we didn't watch a game that I was going to talk about. So that was interesting. It was a blowout. So it kind of ties back to what I said about Butte, where they just keep fighting till the end. They lost to Wake Forest 43-13. He had 10 catches, 135 yards, and a touchdown.
Yeah. It was the only guy producing for him in that game, for sure. I do remember a little bit of that game. I said I didn't watch Boston College a whole lot. I think I watched a good chunk of that game, actually, and I remember him popping in that one. So, yeah, that checks out. In terms of, what he can do, I think he can become someone's go-to target. A guy who can move around, line up anywhere in the formation, attack all three levels of the field. You can run him on unders. There's a couple plays where you see, and I'm sure, Joe, you saw the under route where he catches it and he's just like gone and it's a touchdown up the sideline, right?
Yeah.
Or you can line him up in the slot, have him run a dig, right? Run the over route, and you can give him the ball in the middle of the field. Or, as we saw, you can make him your guy who's going to go vertical and you're going to throw it up to him and let him go get it. I think he can do all three of those things. That's a rare for a guy who's only 5'10". Normally those guys are kind of possession kind of receivers or just burners. But I think he can be both, which is why I think he can be a go-to guy. He may be a guy that you can get really good value out of because right now he looks like he's a back half of the first, early second round pick. And, he's projected somewhere between picks 15 and 34. You have the Packers, again, showing up, the Chargers showing up, the Ravens showing up, the Giants showing up as teams that we've seen before who possibly need receivers. But any one of those teams stand out?
I think the Giants would be a nice landing spot for him. I talked about it earlier. They're losing, I think his name Galladay or
something.
Yeah, I think this is perfect for the kid. I think if I had to go with like a second option, probably the Ravens, honestly. Just they could use just another dude to help out the what are the words I'm looking for? The core out there. I don't know.
Yeah. I think looking at it, this would be one. My kind of sneaky favorite here is actually the Packers, just because I think the Packers have like the burner and Christian Watson, and they have Lazard, and I think both those guys attack the intermediate to vertical space of the field.
Yeah.
And what they have, that guy who can kind of go all three levels, or at least the first two right now, is kind of Randall Cobb, and he's older. I wouldn't mind seeing them get Zay Flowers because I think Zay Flowers would add some versatility and multiplicity to their offense. Just because, like I said, I think he can attack all three areas of the field, and I think he would complement those other guys that they already have pretty well, whether that's Rodgers or Jordan Love at quarterback. The Chargers would be interesting because I talked about they love Keenan Allen in the slot. Well, I think Zay Flowers can kind of play anywhere. So maybe that's another spot where he would fit in well. You talked about the Giants and the Ravens. I think he could fit well in either one of those spots as well. So it could be interesting in terms of any one of these teams would be fun. Man, all these guys are good, dude. Like,
yeah,
I really like all five of these receivers. Obviously, there's a reason we broke these guys down or highlighted these guys as guys that we broke down. But I think it's time, Joe. I think it's time we rank them.
Sounds good. Let's see. What are your rankings on these five men?
All right. So this is what I have. My favorite guy, just because of the route running, the acceleration, I really like Jordan Addison. I think he's always open. I just think he's always open. I don't think you can go wrong with a guy like that. I know he's a little smaller, but I really think he's going to be a dude who will he's going to, that route running technique and acceleration, that stuff translates.
Yeah.
And I think his game just translates really well. He's really intelligent. I think he'll be able to hop into any offense and fill any role that a team asks him to, which I think just going to allow him to have great production from day one. So my favorite receiver in this draft is Jordan Addison. Number 2, Jackson Smith-Njigba. I told you, he popped off the screen for me. I think the physicality he brings, that's the thing. He has the nastiest attitude of anyone in the draft at receiver. I think he brings it on every play that he's in. I think maybe the one reason he's not above Addison is, he was hurt all year. There's a little bit of a question mark there. What's up with his hamstring? Why did he miss the whole year? At the same time, I think 2021 was enough. The production in the Rose Bowl was enough for me to be like, yeah, this guy's a dude. So I got him second. Third, I have Zay Flowers. That was the other guy that I told you really rose for me, where I was like, wow, this guy is good. Like, I really thought his COD popped off the screen for me. I think he's going to be a game changer for someone. So I really like him. Then Quentin Johnston. This is less about like Quentin Johnston. I know he's kind of a lot of people's number 1 receiver. To me, this was less about like him as much as it was that I just love the other 3 guys so much. It's not that I don't like Quentin Johnston. I think Quentin Johnston's physical traits outweigh anyone else's. Like, he's got the most physical traits of anyone in this 5. But I think he's also the least polished, in terms of his route running and those kinds of things. So I do think his athleticism will allow him to be a good player. If he develops those other things, he's going to be a really, really good player, probably a great player. So I have him 4th, and then 5th, I have Kayshon Boutte. I think his physicality, his toughness, his yak ability, the awareness, I think those things, he can come in and fill a very specific kind of role for a team. And that's probably why I have him 5th, because I think his role is going to be more specific for a kind of offense. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing him. It's probably a pipe dream, but I wouldn't mind seeing him in like Miami, just because I think they could use him in a very similar way to the way the Niners use Debo. I know they already have those 2 receivers who are both really good, right? So it's like they don't really need a receiver. But if they did, in like a different world, in a world where they could actually get him and they would be a high enough pick to get him, because they forfeited their 1st-round pick this year with the whole Stephen Ross like recruiting Tom Brady thing. But if there was a world where they could get him, I think that would be kind of fun. Or maybe another team that runs a similar kind of offense or has a connection that they could kind of use him the way the Niners use Debo. And then I just had a couple honorable mentions. Josh Downs from North Carolina, Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee, Marvin Mims from Oklahoma. All guys that I've watched that I think could be really good. This receiver class doesn't have quite the top end that the last 2 have had, with like Olave and Wilson, Chase and Jefferson. Like, I don't think this class has those guys necessarily. Like, but I think all 8 of the guys that you're seeing on screen right now could be like day 1 contributors. Like, not guys that are going to have to sit the bench and wait. Like, they're going to be guys who can come in and give you another legitimate receiving threat. So I really like this receiving class in terms of their 1 and 2 may not be as great as the last couple, but their 1 through 8 are tighter bunched and all really good. So what do you have, Joe?
Yeah, so for me, my ranking is similar but a little different. Granted, you could tell by the way I talked about some of these dudes, you could tell they're gonna slip down there. But number 1, I had Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think the way you felt about Addison is how I feel about him. I feel like he's just ready to go. Granted, I knocked him for only having that 1 real year production, but I think he just was based off what I saw. I think he's ready to go as soon as he gets to the league. I had a Jordan Addison number 2. I think he fits a great role and probably anywhere he can go. He He has great route running, which will help right off the bat, and he's very quick. So like that acceleration you're talking about, he'll be able to get up and down the field no problem, even with the change of speed moving to the transitioning to the NFL. And then number 3, I had Kayshon Boutte. I think this was more me thinking about his physicality and how like tough he is on the field, when he makes his
Mhm.
catches. And I think I couldn't really tell you where I think he's gonna go or anything, but it's more so I like his style of play as to why I would put him here. And then number 4, I got Zay Flowers. He's probably another one. Like he probably could be number 3, but it's just
Mhm.
in terms of how I'm viewing him. He slipped down just for the simple fact of being a little smaller dude compared to everyone else. And
Fair.
yeah, yeah, honestly, that's all it really came down to. He's a great player based off what I saw. Obviously, I'm not watching Boston College all the time,
Yeah.
but I think he could fit really well in the NFL being as quick as he's like a Jordan Addison in a way, just really quick, making good catches. And then number 5, I kind of dogged him when I talked about him earlier, Quentin Johnston. I think it was just I think he needs to work on his things before he could be higher up on this list in what I was saying.
Yeah. I think Quentin Johnston's the classic, like, has the physical tools. Got to
Uh-huh.
see a little bit more. Like, his first 2 years were less than impressive at TCU, and then this year he was a much better player. And so that shows he improved, and so that capability for him is there. And if he does keep doing that, then he will be a really good NFL player. It's just I think what you're getting at is you're just not sold yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the better way to put it. I was just like, I don't know. For me, it was
Yeah,
just a
yeah.
question mark. That's what it
Yeah,
came down
yeah.
to.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. Well, I mean, this was I had a good time, doing this
Yeah.
because I'm pretty excited for the draft. The draft's always kind of a fun thing just because so many dudes' dreams come true. You know what I mean? Guys who have
True.
been working for
Yeah.
a specific goal for their entire lives, and then they get added, and then every team is excited about guys they drafted because there's like the hope that you just drafted a guy who's like a Hall of
Next year.
Famer,
Yeah.
an All Pro or a Pro Bowler, and that does happen every year. So it's always fun, and to kind of have an idea of who these teams are drafting it's a good time. So, Joe, you want to tell the listeners who we're going to draft or who we're going to analyze next week?
Let me run through my notes. We got oh no. I wrote it down on the interwebs. Give me one quick second.
I caught you off guard. My bad.
No, you're good. Let's see. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think we're flipping it to the defensive side, rolling with the
Yeah.
DB,
Yep.
but it is? Yeah, yeah. We're running
Yeah.
with the
The
corners next week.
the
Yep.
corners. So we got the inverse of receivers. We gave you all the receivers, all the dudes making plays on offense this week. Next week, tune in because we're going to give you the corners and the guys who are going to be covering these guys at the next level, and give you the defensive playmakers. And then I think we got to finish out with the banger of the week.
Little banger. Yeah, this one, it's coming off of it was just simply today. I was in the car, I had, bars stuck in my head, and I'm rolling with Circo Loco, our guy Drizzy. It's funny
Drizzy.
because they play it all the time at the Rams games, which I find hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just I don't know, something about it today. It was in my head. I was listening on the radio. They had Daft Punk rolling, and that's just what sparked it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So so we're rolling Circo Loco this week, Drizzy. Y'all know it. But coming from the end of our screen, we got our guy Ray Riley closing it out. Take us out, my guy.